Hey gang, it's Chris Angel coming at you for another episode of Marketing for the Rest of Us. And today we're going to talk about response versus reaction. We're going to see how this goes. I typically have a more direct thought process of where I want to go. Today my mind has been all over the place. I started this morning writing the text that I actually put in this post. And it was going to be a written post only, not a video. But then my mind started to squirrel. I started squirreling down different places I wanted to go with that written post. And I felt like what I needed was to talk it out versus write it out because there were just too many places to go. So there's a couple observations from today that I want to make in this episode about response versus reaction. So let's just start here. So this morning I felt like I was behind. Like I've been in a reaction to the coronavirus and the pandemic up to this point. And not checked out. I've been reading news headlines. I've been looking at statistics. But a lot of that behavior was in a reaction, like what's going on now? What's happening now? What's happening now? And it was a checking in on things that had already happened. And what I hadn't done was sit down. I have done a lot of thinking about what does this mean and all that. But what I hadn't done is what am I going to do? What am I going to do? I hadn't gotten to that spot yet. So this morning I started journaling like, okay, let's play this scenario out. Let's say I'm quarantined for the next month. What happens if that goes further? What happens? There was just a lot of running scenarios in my head so that I could get to a place of responding to the facts, responding to the situation rather than feeling behind. And it was interesting because one of the things I've been looking at lately is the tracker, the stat tracker. There's a link in this text or in the text of this post on the worldometer.info. If you go to worldometer.info, you'll see this website has a counter of a bunch of counters. It's crazy. It's really fascinating. You can see deaths this year, births this year. You can see how many cigarettes are being smoked today. Just got crazy. It's got crazy statistics on it. Well, one of the things that's got on there is the coronavirus updates. So every day, the site updates itself with all the countries in a spreadsheet. How many new cases of coronavirus? How many new deaths of coronavirus? How many cases have been resolved, right, where the person has recovered from the coronavirus. So it's been interesting to watch that. And the thought was there's a time where we as a species have had a scoreboard like this. I don't know, where all countries are reporting into some place, and then we're taking that scoreboard and sharing it with the public and saying, hey, public, here are the latest statistics, or here's the latest score in the game as it relates to this pandemic. And there's something to be said for that, because I think part of the reaction has come from the scoreboard. When you don't know what the score is, you don't really react. You're like, I don't know. I think the score is, I don't know what the score is. So I'm just enjoying the game, right? Or I'm just here watching the game. You can see this in, I don't really watch sports much anymore. But think about any Super Bowl you've ever watched, for example, and how your team is down in the fourth quarter and you're starting to get anxious because you're like, can they make it back? Can they not make it back? Are they going to the variable of adding a scoreboard to this whole thing has created a lot of the panic and anxiousness, I think. The news will go out and grab those statistics from the scoreboard and say, oh my gosh, death toll surges to 1,000. Now, that doesn't minimize the 1,000 people that died when the person wrote that headline. They could say okay, the death rate is 8% or 7% or some big number of a percent where the flu is 0.1%. And so we see a scoreboard and we're like, oh crap, we're all going to die. And there's more reaction, right? Now it's interesting because if you actually go look at the worldometer.com, if you see year to date, this year, it's March, this year, if you look at the number of deaths from communicable diseases. That is diseases passed on to other people, right? Like it's communicable, like I can give it to you. If you look at deaths this year, so 2.5 months in, the global amount of deaths from communicable diseases is 2.8 million year to date in 2.5 months. If you look at the deaths of the flu year to date, the flu year to date is over 100,000 deaths in 2.5 months. Now, if you look at the coronavirus year to date, right, it's 7,500 or, over 7,500 people. So take the flu, over 100,000. Now take the coronavirus, it's over 7,500. Again, I totally get the compounding effect of the spread of the coronavirus and it's more deadly than the flu. I get all that. What's interesting to me, though, is that we don't seem to be panicked about the flu. What is that about? If you actually value the human soul, if you actually value the soul that died and passed on, if that's what this is about, well, we're afraid of people dying. Why are we not afraid of the flu? Because clearly the flu is crushing on the scoreboard. It's crushing the coronavirus. For deaths, that's interesting, isn't it? Listen, my whole thing is like, can we just ask some bigger questions about the statistics of things? I've seen so many posts where people are like, hey, the coronavirus isn't the flu. As if like we're defending the coronavirus's superpower. I get it. We're quarantined, fine. Here I am, I'm at home. But just be clear that the reaction people are having right now is not about actually the loss of life. Because if it was, they would be much more in uproar about the number of deaths from the flu and how communicable that is. The flu is passed on from person to person. So the reaction, all I'm trying to say today in this episode is that there is a reaction happening to statistics scoreboard, and we've never tracked it like this before. We never had a scoreboard like this before. And so I think for a lot of us, we've just kind of been in the past, head in the sand. Yeah, it's a problem, but we live with it. We deal with it. It is what it is. And now that we have a scoreboard and everybody's being able to look at the scoreboard, it's like the Super Bowl. And we're like, crap, we're all down and the coronavirus is killing people at 8% of people who get it. And like, oh my God. And what it's doing is it's reducing our ability to respond. And not that it's doing it, but we are the ones who are reducing our own ability to respond. Like, pause. Let's look at what's actually going on. Let's look at the statistics of things and let's start to make some conscious decisions about, one, what we value. Do we value life? Is that what this is about? Do we value life? Or is this a panic because we're afraid we're going to all catch it and then die? Interestingly, the recovery rate is like 92%. People who get the coronavirus, like 92%. And if you look, there was another statistic, I believe, I'll have to add the link to the article in the comments of this post. But there was an article on Wired magazine that was just looking at the age ranges of death, right? And it was from the coronavirus, and it was like, really small all the way up until you get to about 50, and then 50 it climbs a little bit, 60 it climbs more, 70 it climbs more, and 80 it starts to go up pretty high. So statistically, all the people buying toilet paper are not statistically at risk, right? So you understand what I'm saying, right? Like there's a response that is appropriate, and then there's a reaction that's probably out of balance. And there's one other thought that I wanted to write about today that I just couldn't quite put words to. So let's see if I can't add some of that here. I read years ago. I read Good to Great from Jim Collins. It's a great business book, one of my favorites. And he talks about confronting the brutal facts. So I went and read that chapter again today, confronting the brutal facts. And it was interesting because what he's saying was the companies who moved from a good to great standing that they studied in the book, they had this ability to not be, it wasn't like they were just optimistic and Pollyanna and everything's going to be okay. They had this ability to confront what was staring them in the face, what was a brutal fact, and then make appropriate responses or corrections to or deal with what they were staring at. And then he went on, and at the end of the chapter, he talks about Jim Stockdale, right, from the Stockdale paradox. So Jim Stockdale was a prisoner of war in the Vietnam War. And he was tortured 20 times within 8 years in this prisoner of war camp. And Jim Collins, the author of the book, talked to him, years later. When he was writing this book, he actually interviewed him. And one of the things he had said, like, what was the difference about the people who died versus the people that made it out of the prisoner of war camp? And Jim Stockdale, the prisoner of war, had said, oh, that's easy. The people who never made it out were the ones who were the optimists. The optimists never made it out. Because the optimists said to themselves, oh, we're going to be out of here by Christmas. And then Christmas came and went, and they said, oh, well, now we're going to be out of here by Easter. Easter came and went, and they're like, we'll be out of here by Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving came and went, and Jim Stockdale said those people, the optimists, died of a broken heart. Like, ultimately, they couldn't be with, they couldn't respond to their current circumstance. And so for whatever reason, I don't know if that's I'm sure that's figuratively, they died of a broken heart, but I'm sure somewhere they gave up. Maybe they committed suicide. Maybe they didn't dig deep enough in that environment to try to make it out, right? But it was interesting because as I read that today, it made me realize that optimism and pessimism are two sides of the same coin. Right? There are people who are optimistic and Pollyanna, like, oh, the coronavirus, it's not a big deal. It's okay. Let's all kiss each other. Right? That's not the answer. We're not saying like it's not a problem. That's not a good response. But everybody else who's buying toilet paper in droves and panicking and freaking out, that's pessimism. That's also not the answer. That is not confronting the brutal facts. It's like, I heard yesterday there was a hashtag going around. Have you guys seen this? The hashtag was like, stay the F home. Hashtag stay the F home. Like, that's what people were putting on their Facebook profile or whatever. Like, can you get the energy of that? The energy of other people saying to the world, hey, stay the F home, has fear and panic all over it. Why would I tell you to stay the F home? Like, again, if we go back to the beginning of this conversation, the flu has killed over 100,000 people year to date, and the coronavirus has killed 7,500. We are all quarantined. We're quarantining ourselves. And you, in a pessimistic way, telling me to stay the F home is not an appropriate response to the situation. However, so rather, why don't we confront the brutal facts and ask better questions of the current circumstance? Let's ask better questions. Why are we having this reaction? That's a good question. Why, and what do I value? What do I value? Those are good questions to create a good response. And I think, so if we go back, let me tie off the good to great Stockdale paradox with a bow here for a second. I think coming out of that thought process today about confronting the brutal facts, I just got to be with like, what is next for me? What is next for me? I refuse to stay in some type of a reactive, feeling behind in this thing. I'm going to start making decisions for myself about how do I orient myself to this circumstance rather than feeling trapped in my home or feeling unproductive. I actually get to make some choices about what I'm going to do moving forward. Hey, listen, what if, they said it's not like the coronavirus is going to be gone here. I've read some different sources that have said it could be in existence for 18 months. That doesn't mean we're going to be quarantined for 18 months, but that definitely means it's not going to go away. So what are we going to do? Like, we're going to have all embrace the hashtag of stay the F home for the next 18 months? Are we going to live in fear of potentially bumping into someone out there in the world after the quarantine is over because of the possibility that coronavirus still lives in people? I'm not going to live that way. I'm not going to live that way. I think what's happening, again, because of the scoreboard that we have, now that we have a scoreboard that's keeping tally of all the new cases of infections and all the new cases of deaths and all those things, I think we're adjusting to this kind of data. We've never had that before. Like I said, if we had, and by the way, when you go to worldometer.info, you can see that the current year-to-date stats of flu-related deaths in real time. It's showing it to you. But we don't have, it's not keeping track of the flu like it's keeping track of the coronavirus. So in the coronavirus page of that website, you can see new cases in the last 24 hours, new deaths in the last 24 hours. But with the flu, you can't see the new cases of the flu. You can't see the new deaths of the flu. You can't see that on that site. And so we don't have the same scoreboard or feedback mechanism for other communicable diseases. And so it's easier to not react to the threat of those things. But it is easy to react to the threat of the coronavirus because of the way we're tracking it. And I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful that somebody's tracking these things. And I'm also thankful for the way that we have, as a globe, communicated with one another. I think I did a post the other day, I think that's remarkable. Maybe this is a breakthrough for us as a species. The degree that we've communicated globally and organized ourselves as a species globally is quite a breakthrough, I think. But here's my concern. The fear is the thing. I wish it didn't come down to this, but I think it's the fear of it all that caused us to organize so quickly with one another. Now, when the fear goes away, I'm wondering if we will continue to respond, not react, to respond to other problems globally like we did with this as a reaction. Could we as a species respond to our environment? Could we as a species respond to road traffic accidents that result in death? Could we as a species respond to flu deaths and communicable diseases? Could we as a species respond to cancer? Could we as a species respond to obesity and heart and obesity related deaths? Do you see there is all of this that's happening right now is a breakthrough in our communication and our ability to organize around something, but it's been done out of a reaction that came from fear. And when the fear subsides and we go back to life as normal, I'm wondering if we're going to be able to organize this way or not. And my concern is that we won't. My hunch is that we won't. We won't respond. We won't respond to the things that still are epidemics. Maybe we don't call them pandemics, but there are epidemics in society, and we'll just go back because we're not keeping score. We're not, and frankly, we're not all threatened. I think that's one of the big things here is everybody's felt threatened. And out of self-preservation, we're stay the F home, right? So, yeah, those are a lot of thoughts from today. I guess you could move this back let's move it towards business for a second, just because that's where ultimately the overarching conversation of this show lives, right? You, in this moment in time, at the time of this recording, you have some choices to make. You get to continue to react to headlines and statistics and scoreboards, or like I did this morning, after a couple weeks of being in reaction, sat down and started to ask some bigger questions. What is this? What is it that I really value? What is really happening? What is really going on? Can I see both sides? I think that's part of it, gang. You've got to be able to see both sides. All sides, not even both sides, all sides. There's more than two sides. You got to be able to look at all sides and don't get so emotionally attached to your worldview or your perspective that you can't see the other sides. Because it's in seeing the other sides that you can confront the brutal facts and start to make some better decisions about how to move forward. And now you're in a response, not a reaction, right? So in your business, it's the same way, right? There are people right now who are not going to want to spend money. So how can you in business adjust, respond? How can you continue to support people, help people, provide goodwill to people through your business, building relationship with them in this hard time? That comes back around for sure, for sure. So, lastly, I guess I would say this, because this is a marketing show. I would say, like, right now there is a need for you to shine your light into other people's darkness. It's very easy when you're feeling in a reaction to things to want to shrink back and not say anything. And it's easy to also not want to say markety things, which it makes total sense. But by the way, even when a pandemic is over, please still don't say markety things to people. Don't be markety to people. Marketing is simply you leading a conversation that leaves the world better than you found it. So in your marketing, in your business, if you can get access to why you're really in business and the difference you want to make in the world, then you can have that conversation absent of features and benefits and products and services. You can actually have a conversation for the bigger thing you're here to create change for in the world. And that, friends, is marketing. Everybody else has made marketing icky and bad. And the majority of people have done it that way. But I don't believe that's actually what marketing is. For those of us who are heart-centered that want to make the world better, we have something that we've seen. We've seen something about how the world could be different. And we built a business around that. And you being able to put that on loudspeaker for the difference you see to see in the world, that is what you get to lead a conversation in. And that is marketing. And that shines a light in darkness. So in this day and age, right now, you actually have an opportunity to not go quiet and dark because you don't know what to say, but double down on the thing that you see to be different in the world. It's a time to double down on that and to shine your light in the darkness where other people are stuck in a reaction. You could actually respond. And the response is turn the light on and shine the light over there where people are feeling fearful and afraid and scary and scared, right? So that is the response. As it relates to business and marketing. Marketing is simply you leading a conversation for the people you're here to serve. So why not serve them through the message that you have? Thanks for hanging out with me here in this episode tonight. Until tomorrow when we go live again, have a great evening.